Why would Bitcoin and Ethereum reportedly get the spotlight in Las Vegas, while XRP gets left out? That single detail is what started raising questions about who actually decides what gets seen in the crypto space and what doesn't. So here's the real question. Is this just a marketing choice or something bigger happening behind the scenes? Drop your opinion in the comments because what follows might change how you look at all of this. Welcome to Rula. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest crypto and XRP updates. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions. This episode discusses public statements, reports, and market speculation for analysis purposes only. The moment people started looking closer, the situation around the Las Vegas sphere didn't feel random anymore. According to statements shared during the event, Ripple had explored the idea of featuring XRP on the sphere, one of the most high-profile digital advertising platforms in the world. But the response they reportedly received was unexpected. Bitcoin and Ethereum were allowed. XRP was not. No detailed explanation was publicly confirmed. And that's where things started raising questions. Some observers began pointing out that decisions like this don't usually happen in isolation. When a major asset is excluded from a platform of that scale, it often reflects internal preferences, risk considerations, or broader industry sentiment. It has been suggested that ongoing regulatory uncertainty around XRP may have influenced how certain organizations choose to position themselves. And that's where the story starts to get more interesting. Because this wasn't just about one display in Las Vegas. It was another example of the tension XRP has faced over the years. A tension between growing adoption on one side and hesitation or resistance on the other. But while that moment caught attention, it wasn't the biggest signal coming out of the event. Something else was shifting behind the scenes, and it could have a much bigger impact moving forward. Behind the scenes, there had been an ongoing struggle between innovation and regulation. Different agencies appeared to approach digital assets in different ways, and that lack of consistency made it difficult for companies to operate with confidence. Instead of clear guidelines, the space often felt unpredictable, with decisions sometimes coming after the fact rather than being clearly defined from the start. During the event, Ripple's leadership openly reflected on that period, questioning why clearer frameworks hadn't been established earlier. The frustration wasn't just about enforcement. It was about the absence of straightforward rules that everyone could follow, even if they didn't fully agree with them. Now, that tone appears to be shifting. There are growing signs that regulators are beginning to move toward more structured definitions and clearer boundaries. And while nothing is fully finalized yet, the difference in approach is already being noticed across the industry. Because for large institutions, clarity isn't optional, it's everything. Without it, participation stays limited. With it, entirely new doors can open. And that raises an important question. What happens when those doors finally start to unlock? During the event, a key idea was quietly reinforced. Build with institutions first, then expand to the public later. At first, that might seem backwards, but when you zoom out, it follows a pattern we've seen before. In the early days, the internet wasn't built for the average person. It was used by governments, research labs, and large organizations long before it became part of daily life. Only after the infrastructure was strong enough did it open up to everyone else. The same logic appears to be guiding Ripple's strategy. Right now, much of the focus is on integrating with financial institutions, building the underlying rails, improving liquidity, and creating systems that can handle real-world demand at scale. It's not the most visible progress, but it's the kind that lays the foundation for everything that comes next. Because without that foundation, retail adoption struggles to take off. Access remains limited, tools stay fragmented, and everyday users don't get the seamless experience they expect. But if that institutional layer becomes solid, the transition to public use could happen much faster than most people think. And that's exactly why one missing piece has been getting so much attention lately. That's where the Clarity Act comes into the picture. In simple terms, the goal of this legislation is to define how different types of digital assets are classified and which regulatory bodies are responsible for overseeing them. Instead of overlapping authority and unclear boundaries, it aims to create a structured framework that companies can actually follow. And that matters more than it might seem. Because large financial institutions don't move based on hype, they move based on certainty. Without a clear legal environment, even the biggest players tend to stay on the sidelines, no matter how promising the technology looks. Some reports suggest that major firms have been closely watching how regulation develops before making deeper commitments to blockchain-based systems. Not because they lack interest, but because the risk of operating in unclear territory is simply too high. If a framework like this does move forward, it could remove one of the biggest barriers the industry has faced for years. But what's really getting attention isn't just the proposal itself. It's the timeline that's now starting to form around it. According to circulating reports, the next phase of the Clarity Act process is expected to begin with a formal markup stage. That's typically where revisions are made, language is finalized, and the foundation for a vote starts to take shape. While timelines in legislation can always shift, some sources suggest this step could happen in the near term. If that stage moves forward as anticipated, the following months could bring further debates, potential votes, and eventually a final decision. Of course, none of this is guaranteed. Policy changes often face delays, amendments, or unexpected resistance along the way. But even the possibility of a structured timeline is enough to get attention, because timing matters. Political cycles, shifting priorities, and economic conditions can all influence whether a bill gains momentum or stalls out. Some analysts have pointed out that certain windows of opportunity tend to close quickly, especially when broader political dynamics come into play. So while nothing is set in stone, the coming period is being closely watched. And at the same time, Ripple doesn't appear to be waiting around to see how things unfold. They're continuing to position themselves as if that clarity is coming. One point that continues to come up is their long-term commitment to XRP itself. Despite speculation over the years, Ripple remains one of the largest holders of XRP, which naturally ties their success closely to the asset's future. From a business perspective, that alignment matters. It means their incentives are directly connected to how useful and widely adopted XRP becomes. But the focus isn't just on holding, it's on utility. Ripple has been working on expanding services aimed at financial institutions, including solutions designed for liquidity management, cross-border transactions, and broader capital market access. These kinds of tools aren't built for headlines. They're built for integration into real financial systems. And that's where things start to shift. Because instead of positioning XRP as just another digital asset, the strategy appears to center around making it functional at scale, something that can move efficiently within existing financial infrastructure rather than sitting outside of it. At the same time, developments around treasury-focused services and institutional platforms suggest Ripple is aiming to deepen its role behind the scenes, where most large-scale financial activity actually happens. But even with all that progress, there's still a bigger question hanging over everything. What does this actually lead to if all the pieces fall into place? If all these pieces start to come together, the impact could go far beyond one company or one digital asset. For years, the biggest limitation in the crypto space hasn't just been technology, it's been accessibility. Many systems still feel disconnected from everyday financial life, making it difficult for the average person to actually use them in a meaningful way. But that could begin to change if two things happen at the same time. Infrastructure becomes strong enough, and regulation becomes clear enough. Because once institutions are fully integrated, the tools they build don't stay limited to themselves. They tend to flow outward into apps, services, and platforms that everyday users interact with daily. Payments become smoother, transfers become faster, and financial products start to feel more connected rather than fragmented. Some observers suggest that this is when digital assets move from being speculative to being functional. Less about holding and more about actually using. Of course, it's still a developing situation. Adoption at that scale doesn't happen overnight, and there are always variables that can slow things down or shift direction entirely. But the direction itself is what's drawing attention. Because if the foundation is being built now and the rules are finally defined, then what comes next might not look like the crypto space people are used to today. And that's where the bigger picture starts to take shape. Stepping back from all the headlines, one thing becomes clear. This story has never really been about a single event or even a single announcement. From the controversy around visibility at major platforms, to the ongoing push for regulatory clarity, to Ripple's focus on institutional adoption first, everything seems to be pointing toward a transition phase in the industry. A shift where the early, uncertain era of digital assets gradually gets replaced by something more structured and defined. But transitions like this are rarely simple. They come with tension between old systems and new ones, between hesitation and adoption, and between what exists today and what's trying to be built for tomorrow. That's why moments like the Las Vegas event get so much attention. They don't just reflect what's happening right now, they hint at where influence, infrastructure, and access might be heading next. Still, nothing here is guaranteed or fully settled. Much of what's being discussed is based on proposed frameworks, evolving policies, and ongoing development inside the industry itself. Which is why the real question isn't just what changes next. It's how quickly the gap closes between today's financial systems and the ones being built in the background right now. The content is for educational and formational purposes only and should not be considered financial, investment, or legal advice. Cryptocurrency markets involve significant risk. Always do your own research. Thank you.